Well, what a race it was earlier in the day. What battling we saw up and down the order as the frantic action began here at the legendary Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. It was an excellent drive from Ninovic for a second victory in the GB3 Championship, partnered by the BRDC. And not only that, he has become your new championship leader. Between race 1 and race 2, though, heavy rain has hit the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Let's remind ourselves, though, of race 1 a bit earlier on in the day and how Ninovic took his second victory. Highlights from round 7 of the GB3 Championship, partnered by the BRDC, and it was once again Ninovic on pole position, racing his way down into the first corner, leading from Hugo Schwarzer and Patrick Huijsenrode. A poor start from Schwarzer would allow Huijsenrode down the inside. By the time they got low through Eau Rouge and Lyall, they were still side by side. Lyall would throw his way into the mix to make it 3 wide, and then Will McIntyre on the left-hand side of your screen would make it 4 wide as he was able to throw his way to the inside. By the time they got onto the brakes, though, working their way into Lyall, it was the advantage for the number 11 of Noah Lyall. Hugo Schwarzer in 3rd position, with Will McIntyre dropped back down into 4th. Patrick Huijsenrode in 5th. The safety car would come out after an incident for Divi Nandon. He would be out of the race, so the pack would be neutralised and everyone would have to settle in for what would be a frantic final part of the race. 10 minutes was left on the clock when we got back racing, and then all would be racing as hard as they possibly could, finding their way up and down the order. We saw plenty of big moves. We saw plenty of big moments indeed, like this one for Wampu Shui straight over the road at Lyall. And there would be another safety car, an incident for Jack Sherwood in the number 78 and Nikita Johnson, both of them being retired from the race. We thought the race would be over. Alas, it was not. There was 1 lap left to go, and then we'd be racing around. A bit of contact between Will McIntyre and Hugo Schwarzer would send them off the road, along with a couple of the hill speeds. They'd be firing their way over at the Lyall chicane. Out through the final corner, though, it was an excellent drive from Alex Ninovic to win from pole position across the line for victory. Behind him, though, it was a tight battle with Hugo Schwarzer coming out on top against Kanato Lee. It was an absolutely crazy race, especially all of that behind in 4th and lower. But a great drive from Alex Ninovic in what was beautiful conditions in Spa. I alluded to it there in the intro, though. The conditions changed somewhat after race 1. This was a few hours after the first race was complete. The rain absolutely came down. It got heavier and heavier and heavier. It has since cleared up somewhat, but still the race surface will certainly be a lot greener. There's no rubber down. They're going to struggle a little bit more for grip than they were a little bit earlier on in the day. Wild scenes here at Spa, as we expect here, deep in the Ardennes. Someone who made the most, though, of the first race earlier on in the day, despite a qualifying where he had to start from the rear of the field courtesy of an issue in qualifying. Freddy Slater was able to work up from 23rd all the way to 9th. Let's hear what he had to say after the first race.
Freddie, you're showing that you can dominate from the front, but in that race you showed just what you could do when carving your way through. When was the last time you had a race like that?
Yeah, I think it was back to my cadet days at PFI Super 1. So no, it's been a while. I started on the last row in last position, which was a bit of a weird thing. But you know, it was such an amazing experience to obviously be able to have that fight through the pack, and obviously have a bit of dirty air experience with 23 cars in front of me, and also a good experience and good learning for the future.
You say it's an amazing experience. You get to do it two times further this weekend, because unfortunately you got the same position. You've having had a bit of practice in race 1. How far up the field do you reckon you can get in race 2 and race 3?
Yeah, going to be interesting. Obviously, the rain's on its way, so we'll see what that changes with race 2, and then see what the weather does tomorrow, because I think it's looking quite wet for tomorrow as well. So yeah, it's pretty crazy out there. I think in the wet it'll be even more. Obviously, it's a bit of a unknown with this car. We've basically done no wet running. I think we did like half a day at Brands Hatch, so you know, it's going to be intense and it's going to be cool.
In terms of learning, you know, you're used to being towards the sharp end of the grid, but like you just referenced, being at the back is a new experience for you. Do you learn more as a driver being at the back of the grid rather than at the front?
I wouldn't say you learn more. I think you learn different things. I think I obviously want to be at the front all the time, but I know there's going to be points in my career that I'm not always going to be at the front and where I want to be. And obviously this is one of those weekends that's happened. Obviously we didn't get very far in qualifying, which is the way it goes sometimes, and that's motorsport. But to get that experience to learn and practice the dirty air, practice putting pressure on and defending from behind, stuff like this with a Formula car is completely different. Obviously from my Ginetta experience, you can follow so closely, but in this you have to time the overtake at the right point to build a gap, and then also relieve the pressure from behind. So no, it's a really cool experience, and yeah, I'm loving it so far. So we'll see what we can do for race 2 and race 3.
You also got to use the DRS for the first time in a race there, or probably the first time since Silverstone at least, but how effective was that and how useful was it for you when you were carving through the field?
Yeah, definitely really effective. I think obviously when we're all in a train with DRS, it's obviously quite tough, but I think the tow on this car is quite strong, so even when everybody's got DRS in a train, the effect is still quite there with the tow. But then when the cars don't have DRS in front, you do get a really good slipstream around here, so obviously super long straight, so around Spa. So it's, no, the DRS is really, really powerful, and I think it's a good addition to the series.
Well, you've done it once before. Let's see how much more progress you can make in races 2 and 3 this weekend. Good luck, Freddie.
Thank you.
You might need a bit of that wet weather stuff that we expect around here at Spa to work his way up the order. Again, a fantastic drive from Freddy Slater all the way up to 9th position. He'll be starting from 23rd once again. Someone who made no progress, started from 4th position, finished in 4th position, but still put on a bit of a decent show. Was running at 2nd at one point. The JHR Developments driver of Noah Lyall. He caught up with Richard Randall after race 1.
No, a very interesting race 1 there. You started 4th, you finished 4th, but you weren't there for long, were you? You were all over the place, bumping up and down the order.
Yeah, pretty chaotic race, as you'd expect, racing around Spa in these cars. A lot of overtaking opportunities with the big long straights and how draggy they are. So yeah, mega start. Made my way up to 2nd, but unfortunately we didn't have the pace to hold it. We haven't had a lot of experience running these cars in race trim, so it's always going to be a bit of a challenge. Unfortunately, I think today we're on the wrong side of that. And then we dropped a couple of spots on both restarts, made up one more on the last lap to come back to where we end up starting in P4. So yeah, not a bad day at all, I think.
There's all sorts of stuff kicking off on the last lap. There's all sorts of drama for the podium positions. How much were you involved in that?
But yeah, I was right in the thick of it, to be fair. Obviously, coming down into turn 5, there was the 2 cars in front making contact and cutting the chicane. Kanato and myself doing the same. Then defending from Pradell twice before T14, then McIntyre made a mistake in front, and I was able to capitalise around the outside of Blanchimont, which I was quite happy about. And then yeah, just crossed the line in 4th. So it was very chaotic, and I think we did a good job to pick our way through it.
Yeah, that move at Blanchimont was something I was going to come to. That was pretty hair-raising stuff. How exciting was that?
Oh, it was quite cool, to be fair. It's the kind of thing you see on TV sometimes, and you might try it on the sim, but you wonder if you're ever going to do it in real life. And yeah, today was one of those days. I'm not sure if it was on the broadcast, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
And finally coming to race 2 later on this afternoon, we've had one dry race. It looks like this one could be pretty wet. How would you feel about a potential wet race, and how exciting is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, the timing is good for us because it's our lowest grid position of the weekend, so maybe a little bit more carnage could be good to try and pick our way through the field, but as well, we want to go racing, so hopefully it doesn't get much heavier than it is now, otherwise it could be at risk. But feeling confident though, like with the speed with the cars being really good in the wet so far, so yeah, ready to go.
Well, hopefully we get to see what you can do in race 2. Good luck later on this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Some potential positives for Noah Lyall is that we have had 3 races, I think it is, maybe 2 races cancelled since we got rebranded to GB3 back in 2021. All of those races have been at Silverstone, so we're maybe safe of that around here at Spa. We'll have to wait and see what the weather actually turns into during the 2nd race. Again, 25 minutes of racing. It's a great circuit. We all know it very, very well. We'll take a look at a track guide, and then afterwards we'll see a little bit of an onboard lap with multiple race winner Will McIntyre, who will take us for a ride around this legendary circuit. Before that, though, let's remind ourselves of what this 7-kilometre paradise is in the world of motorsport. Nestled deep in the Ardennes is one of motorsport's most iconic circuits. We've been around for more than 100 years. We'll take a look around the circuit then, that deep braking zone into La Source, that first corner, of course, beginning this 2-kilometre run through Eau Rouge and Raidillon up to Les Combes before they get onto the brakes and flick it through the right-left and then right once more. Dropping down the hill finally into Bruxelles before we get into Speaker's Corner, then through the fast double left-hander at Purn into Le Fagna for the right-hander at Campus, and then the flat-out right-hander at Stavelot brings us all the way down to the iconic Blanchimont. We'll get onto the break for the final complex of corners, the bus stop chicane, which begins the second DRS zone. Of course, the first of the DRS zones being on that run up towards Lake Com. 101 metres of elevation all the way around this circuit, all being climbed from the bottom of Eau Rouge all the way to the top at Lake Com. 19 iconic corners in the world of motorsport. That is Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Let's take a trip then around the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in the capable hands of Will McIntyre for Elite Motorsports. Across the start-finish line before we rise our way up into La Source, a hairpin, little bit of banking going into the corner, but it's slightly raised as you come out. Watch out for the sausage curb there on the left-hand side. Obviously, the other side of it is just gravel. Racing our way then down the hill, and don't get too distracted by the beauty of Eau Rouge and Radion, one of the most iconic corners in all of motorsport. Keep it absolutely pinned through there. We're pinned for 2 kilometres from La Source up to Lake Com. We flick it through the kink, really not a nothing corner at Kemmel Curve, and then we keep rising and rising and rising up the Kemmel Straight into Lake Com. The curb starts on the left hand side. You want to brake a little bit after that before we flick it right, then left, not using too much of the curb. These cars do not like it. And then through Malmedy. Now the descent begins down the roller coaster as we get our way ready for Bruxelles or Rivage. All the corners around here have multiple names, and this being one of them. Go for a slightly later apex before we can get it back over to the right hand side into Speakers through the left hander, and again gravel on the right hand side, and that new reprofile from 2022. Got to be careful without running too far out wide. So fast going into Pouhon, almost completely pinned as they throw it through, having a little bit of oversteer through the mid part of the corner before we dab the brakes and go through Le Fagna. Of course, flick it to the right hand side. You want to keep going right a little bit longer than you think before we go over to the left hand side. That opens up the corner and gets you ready for Campus. Dab of the brake, flick it in, and then prepare to not touch the brake pedal for quite a while once more. We go through the likes of Stavolo before we prepare ourselves for one of the best overtaking corners on this circuit. Before that though, we've got to deal with Blanchimont. It's a completely flat out corner in these cars. We're rising back up the hill once more, and then we go through this corner here. This is Blanchimont, completely flat, easy peasy, but you can get side by side through there. If you do so, you're opening yourself up for a great overtaking opportunity down here into the bus stop. Again, rising up the hill, and a solid elevation change between the two apexes of the bus stop. That there is a lap of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps with Will McIntyre. I've taken a little bit of a look around this circuit. Doesn't make your hair stand on end. I don't know what will. Absolutely incredible race circuit. Just the undulation, the way that it races, it is absolutely perfect. Everyone always loves coming to this place, and we can see why it is a mainstay on the GB3 calendar. Well, with that race, Alex Ninovic obviously taking the victory earlier on in the day. He's taken over the championship lead. Here's a reminder of the championship standings. It's Ninovic, Huizenrode, Lyall and Gianmarco Prado. All 4 Australians, first through 4th, and not separated by very much at all. Again, it's just 6 points separating the championship lead. Deegan Fairclough has dropped down to 5th in the championship, courtesy of being given a post-race time penalty. He's dropped from 9th to 19th in the race results after basically exceeding track limits and gaining an advantage from doing so. That's why he's down to 5th. Will McIntyre in 6th, Hugo Schwarzer in 7th, then Freddy Slater, Reza Swarthan and Nikita Johnson, the drivers there inside the top 10. Someone missing from that top 10, Kanato Lee, who was missing from the last round as well at Zandvoort, but has bounced back brilliantly. He'll be starting this race from pole position, and he had a podium earlier on in the day. He's looking phenomenally quick for the Hill Speed team. And once again, let's catch up with him, with Richard Randall, just before we go into the second race.
Kanato, a crazy qualifying session. The second one was a bit more conventional, and you really showed that pace you've been showing in practice. Well done.
Thank you very much.
In terms of getting a pole position, you're first in GB3. It's the same circuit you made your debut at last year. This is the only circuit you've ever raced at in GB3, but well, it seems to be going well for you.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far in Spa again and GB3. Obviously, I raced here last year, and then I was able to bring the experience from last year into this year, and yeah, it's been good so far.
You've been so fast all week. What's been the secret to your pace around here?
I think just being consistent, having fun. especially it's such a cool track. So enjoying it every single lap, I think that's the important thing and my secret to being fast all weekend.
Obviously, qualifying one was pretty difficult with all sorts of things going on, so you're a bit further down the order than you probably would have liked, but you really proved that pace in session 2. What are you expecting to do from the rest of the weekend with your qualifying results?
Yeah, obviously qualified P1 and I think P7 from Q1, so obviously can still get a good result from P7, and obviously, you know, my aim is to win every race, and especially from P1. I think, you know, that's the best position I've started in a long time, so I think it should be good to be able to get a win.
Well, you certainly seem to have the car underneath you to do that, and you've been putting the pace in as well to also increase your chances. We wish you the best of luck this weekend, and good luck in the races.
Thank you.
Great to hear from Kanato Lee, and great to see the lovely conditions here at the circuit, the Spa-Francorchamps. Quite similar to how we had a little bit earlier on today. Not quite as clear. There is still a little bit of cloud coverage out there, but most importantly, it's dry. Which is a surprise, because considering how things had been earlier on in the day, obviously we had a beautiful start to the day. It's a bit of a turnaround. Anyway, before we jump into it then, let's get ourselves ready for the second race of the evening. Of course, 11 laps ready ahead of us. Let's go racing. Is there another 11-lap showstopper ahead of us as we get ready to go racing at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps for the second time this season? It was an incredible race earlier on in the day, won by Alex Ninovic. Can Kanato Lee take a first victory from pole position? Let's remind ourselves that the circuit will be racing at with that short run into the source before we continue the plunge downhill before rising up at Eau Rouge and Radion into the DRSO, which will be active from lap 2 onwards into Les Combes, and then down the hill through Malmedy into Bruxelles, Speaker's Corner, of course Pouhon, Le Fagnes, then Campus and Stavelot for that incredibly fast right-hander at Blanchimont. Drop it down on the brakes to the slowest real part of the circuit at the bus stop, which is one of the best overtaking opportunities. There is plenty of places though to overtake around this 7-kilometre circuit with the 2 DRS zones in use and 19 turns. We saw plenty of overtakes and plenty of packs as well. That 4-wide bit of racing in race 1 as they were racing up towards Les Combes was absolutely incredible. And again, we are ready for another beautiful race. It is good conditions out there. One major thing though, because of that rain that came over after race 1, this track will be a little bit more slippery. It won't be ridiculously noticeable, but there will be slightly lower grip. It's dried out really quickly, courtesy of it being fairly warm out there. You can see 24.6 degrees Celsius. The track temperature somewhere in the low 30s as well. Wind speed not ridiculously high. It was very windy earlier on in the day, but that's dropped down now to just 12 kilometers an hour. It's not super fast. It should be very manageable. Of course, high winds around a high-speed circuit like this can cause its fair share of problems, but they don't have that to worry about, and Kanato Lee can focus his attention forwards and potentially to a race victory. He'll have a lot of work ahead of him though to fend off Gianmarco Prado, but to fend off the championship leader Alex Ninovic, who starts from 3rd position. I mean, big important stuff though of those championship contenders, some that are a little bit further down the order than maybe we would expect. Pat Huizenrode, just 10th place. This was noted going into race 1 that his race 1 starting position really not that bad. He was starting from 3rd position in race 1, and race 2 it would be a bit of a struggle from 10th place. However, one major concern for the championship leader from Zandvoort is his race pace. Whilst not that bad, he was knocked out of the rhythm quite a bit during the race, and that maybe could throw up a few questions. Back there as well, Hugo Schwarzer, after a great drive to a podium, is eyeing up a potential victory before a little bit of contact between himself and Will McIntyre. He's starting down in 12th position alongside Kai Darianani, who's actually had some really good speed in the time past. So the marshals guiding the final few drivers into place on the green flag lap. So it's the installation lap. That is not the formation lap. So they're all put into their spots. Then they will begin the formation lap. They'll go for one final, basically, preparation of this 7-kilometre behemoth of the world of motorsport. Then they'll position themselves back onto the grid and they'll get ready to go racing. What could you imagine the thoughts are like of the drivers behind the wheels? That's Keanu Elazari, the, of course, high-tech TGR driver, backed by Alpine, the bright pink BWT sponsorship on that car. Looks absolutely fantastic, and you literally cannot miss it. He'll be starting this one from 5th position, eyeing up another podium. We've seen some great speed out of him. There's Kai Darianani. You can see over there the number 5 on the background of the shot, just in the distance. He, of course, came into this round as the championship leader. He's already relinquished that. He'll be eyeing on finding a way of grabbing it back somehow, any way possible. He'll give it a good go. Some of the drivers that are further down the order, again, it is going to be, we'll roll through the grid, by the way, once we've got rolling, so don't panic too much. But Freddy Slater will be starting once again from 23rd position. Deegan Fairclough will be starting back there with him. The difference between this race and the last race is the other two high-tech TGR cars of Keanu Elazari and Nikita Johnson were both able to qualify. One major thing, though, Nikita Johnson was originally slated to start from 3rd position. He's dropped back to 6th. Courtesy of a 3-place grid penalty after an incident in the previous race. So, the formation lap begins then, and we are led by Kanato Lee for the Hill Speed team. Then it's Gianmarco Prado for Rodin. And then it is the entire rest of the field ready, hungry for some big results. What could be out there for them? Is there the potential of maybe podiums, even for those at the back end of the top 10? With the drive that Freddy Slater had through the field, you wouldn't necessarily rule it out. Let's take a look at the starting grid with Kanato Lee on pole position, then Gianmarco Prado in 2nd position alongside for the Rodin team. Then it's Alex Ninovic's teammate down in 3rd position, with Hiyu Yamakoshi starting from 4th, the season best performance for the Hill Speed driver. Then Keanu Elazari in 5th. Nikita Johnson dropped down into 6th position for the high-tech TGR team, dropped down behind his teammates as well. Will McIntyre made it 4 wide on the run, this run down to Lake We'll be starting alongside Dion Gouda. Then it's Noah Lyall in 9th position, with Patrick Huizenrode starting from 10th, the driver 2nd in the championship at the back end of the top 10. Kai Darianani from 11th position with Hugo Schwarzer on back-to-back podiums. He'll be starting from 12th. He'll have a big trip ahead of him if he's able to make the 3-peat on that. Abby pulling from 13th position with some struggles on speed. Wampu Shui alongside in 14th spot. Rhys Swuthen will start from 15th alongside Jack Sherwood, whose great qualifying in the previous race unfortunately wasn't really used as he was spun round after contact with Nikita Johnson. Flynn Jacks will start from 17th position alongside Stefan Bostanchiev. And then it's Bianca Bustamante in 19th. It's Divi Nandan, who retired on the opening lap in the race earlier on in the day for JHR Developments. Lucas Flusha from 21st. Before we get to the final 2 positions, it's Deegan Fairclough in 22nd on the penultimate row of the grid, and on the last one, it is Freddy Slater. Those 2 drivers at the back end of the field are the most aggressive, the most position-chasing drivers that we have on this grid. They have gained the most. The pair of them fly up the order. Deegan Fairclough, now yes, of course, he was given a post-race time penalty. I do understand that. But he did still, I know he exceeded track limits at one point, fair enough. But he did go from the back of the field to all the way up to 9th position. Obviously, Freddy Slater was inside the top 10 before getting knocked down a little bit, ended up in 10th spot, was promoted up to 9th courtesy of Fairclough's penalty. They are both able to work their way through this field comfortably. So very close there between Kanato Lee and Gianmarco Prado as they work their way into the final braking zone and, of course, into the bus stop. Who's going to be taking this victory? That's the big question. Can Kanato Lee do it? I mean, look, he's got the pace. He showed that in the previous race where he didn't necessarily qualify that well. I think it was 7th position, still worked his way up and onto the podium, showed some really, really good speed. And once again, he'll be looking to show some more. We've seen him before in the GB3 Championship, partnered by the BRDC. He's obviously missed Zandvoort. He was racing back in Silverstone. He is yet to take a victory. Today could be that day, and what an iconic location to do it. We've had plenty of drivers take their first victories in GB3 around here. Formula 2 driver Alex Dunn, when memory serves, and he finished both those races. He won the first 2 races at Spa that year back in 2023. Wonder if there might be the double coming in from Alex Ninovic from 3rd position. They're in position, 11 laps then ahead of us, 25 minutes, whichever one comes first. The lights will come on and we'll race our way on the short chute down into the first corner. Of course, it's not a good start from Kanato Lee, and straight into the race lead. There he is. It's championship leader Alex Ninovic. So he's through into the race lead, getting past Gianmarco Prado as they head their way down into the first corner. A little bit of a bump and a bang in the background as the number 7, the high-tech TGR car of Deegan Fairclough, was trying to muscle his way through. Side by side for 2nd position as they race their way down the hill. That was Yamakoshi trying to make it side by side with Gianmarco Prado, as Kanato Lee has dropped down to 4th. That's Hugo Schwarzer trying to work his way through, going side by side, I believe, with Reza Sawurthan. Now, what's going to happen as we race our way all the way up to Les Combes? Big defensive drive, once again onto the grass. That's the bright pink car of Keanu Alazari trying to work his way into the mix as Yamakoshi gets to the outside, but it's still Alex Ninovic holding on to the race lead. Someone straight lining that. I think that might be Will McIntyre straight lining the run through Les Combes as they work their way down the hill. Certainly so, as the elite driver is going to drop backwards. So it's Ninovic leading from Yamakoshi, from Lee, and then from Keanu Alazari in 4th position. Gianmarco Prado finds himself down in 5th, and then it's Will McIntyre in behind. You've got Nikita Johnson trying to make the move there in that all-silver high-tech TGR car as he looks to the inside of Will McIntyre into Pouon. You can commit so much speed, though, around the outside, and that was beautifully done from Will McIntyre to fend off Nikita Johnson. So, into single file racing as things potentially calm down for about 5 seconds or so. There's a bit of a lock up there coming in from Nikita Johnson. Nearly opened up the door for Pat Huizenrode to work his way through in his XL car. Alas, the opportunity was not quite there, I believe, and so did not find a way past. Dion Gowder in the mix as well. Can he find any way up the order? I think that might have actually been who was racing in the middle of all of that. So it's once again a decent lead coming in. Alex Ninovic leading by a 2nd over Yamakoshi. Lee then behind as well, with 2 hill speeds running 2nd and 3rd. They might be joined by their teammate at some point during this race. Probably unlikely, but Freddy Slater has worked up all the way into 19th position. Meanwhile, Deegan Fairclough getting that car fired up brilliantly. He's in 15th position. We complete the first lap then of 11. 10 laps left to go. Running out wide in the background. I believe that's one of the XLs. That might be Pat Huizenrode there. Just dropping out wide. Certainly is. So Pat Huizenrode there on the left-hand side. There's going to be 3 wide as Hugo Schwarzer fires it down the inside. Hugo Schwarzer the furthest left on your screen on the inside into that first corner, battling it out with Pat Huizenrode as they race their way down the hill. Will they be side by side again as they work their way into Eau Rouge and Radion? Yes, they will. Pat Huizenrode on the right, Hugo Schwarzer on the left. We've seen this before. We saw this in the previous race, and Pat Huizenrode trying to hang it out with Hugo Schwarzer. Perfect drive between the pair of them, but they're going to be joined by those 2 Argenti with Premers as we're going to have the likes of Reza Sawurthan and Wan Pu Shui into the mix. Once again, cars dipping into the grass in the background as we head through in the foreground. It's still Ninovic leading, but now by less than a second from Kanato Lee, Yamakoshi, Alazari, and then Gianmarco Prado. No major switches in that top grouping. There is Dion Gowder in the 25, keeping up with Nikita Johnson in the battle for 7th. Of course, Dion Gowder in the white, and then the purple and the sort of like the pinky red there for the XL team. He's got a decent gap back to Kai Darianani, who himself has a decent gap back to Reza Sawurthan, who at the moment sits 1.8 seconds off the rear end of Darianani in 9th position right now. So what are the sector times looking like? Kanato Lee was much faster than our race leader in the opening sector. I think part of that was down to DRS. I think he might have just got himself within it with a big send through the middle sector and final sector of the first lap. Will McIntyre then, the black and yellow and blue car there, trying to defend for 6th position from Nikita Johnson, Dion Gowder behind, and Kai Darianani. There is Deegan Fairclough, your highest climber from the early portion of this race. He's got all the way up to 14th position in the high-tech TGR, the silver, red and black car with the black nose, with the rocket sponsorship. That one is Fairclough. He is currently in 14th spot, having started from 22nd. Like hornets, they race down into the final corner. And let's see what's going to happen as DRS was enabled on the previous lap. So we saw a little bit of that, but it is definitely enabled now. This is the second of the DRS zones on the start-finish straight. We'll see if anyone can use that to go on the attack. Will McIntyre there getting separated a little bit from the rear end of Gianmarco Prado. And you can tell by his moving, I do not believe he had DRS. So I think he might be feeling a lot of pressure here by the time he reaches the crest of the hill at Les Combes. Will McIntyre be able to hang on from Johnson, from Gouda and from Darianani and hang on to 6th position? He did have some pace issues when it came to the longevity of the race. The Pirelli P0 is kind of struggling a little bit in the hands of Will McIntyre back in Zandvoort. Previous race though, it looked like those issues were fixed. This race looks like they might be back again as Nikita Johnson will make a move to the inside. That's the silver car in the background you can see there. That is the number 4. Nikita Johnson then through and into 6th position on Will McIntyre in the black and yellow. So McIntyre back down into 7th position. And Dion Gouda sat behind in the XL Motorsports car, ready to pounce should there be any issues between these two. However, they have in their light battling lost the slipstream from the top grouping. Gianmarco Prado, well, it needs to be a very good sector from Nikita Johnson. He was originally slated to start this race from 3rd position. Can he close up to the back of Gianmarco Prado and maybe get himself back within DRS? It would be a big assistance not only to him but also to Will McIntyre and Dion Gouda. Kai Darianani as well, sat behind, maybe just a little bit too far back. However, he might be chased down in the near future by Patrick Huizenrode. On the previous lap, Huizenrode was slightly slower than Darianani by a few tenths of a second. In fact, actually by about a second or so. Pat Huizenrode was slower than Kai Darianani, so maybe there is that big gap happening between our two groups. And we are starting to see a bit of separation happening properly between the top group 1st through 9th and then the rest of them 10th on back. Your race leader though, Ninovic, has been caught by Kanato Lee. The fastest lap of the race came on the previous one from Lee, and the hill speed driver is now knocking at the door for a first victory. This is a little bit further down. That's Freddy Slater in the red and black car there, trying to do battle with Reza Suwutham. Can he find his way through? Again, Slater is a bit more patient at the start of the races, but once we start moving through, he gets aggressive, he gets those moves done, and he's been firing his way up the order as Freddy Slater, and he could be on the cusp of moving into the top 10. If someone's going to bridge that gap between what is effectively Group B up to Group A, that top 9 group, it could be Freddy Slater. Nikita Johnson's just set the fastest lap of the race then in 6th position, as he sets his sights on closing up to Gianmarco Prado, and certainly has done so. There's Freddy Slater going side by side with Reza Suwutham. Reza Suwutham in the silver, blue and black car, then losing out, and now we're going in packs of 2, it appears, as Kanato Lee's taken over the race lead. Keanu Alazari here in the bright pink BWT car gets past Yamakoshi, and so he's now up onto the final step of the podium, but a bit of a gap forming courtesy of the DRS as Alex Ninovic has been dropped back into 2nd position. Kanato Lee then back to the race lead after starting from pole position and having a poor start to the race. He said he had really good race pace back in race number 1, and he is showing it now in his hill speed. He's pulling out already a gap early to Alex Ninovic, your championship leader. Then, of course, we've got Keanu Alazari, then Yamakoshi, Nikita Johnson, Gianmarco Prado in behind. Will McIntyre about 1.5 seconds off the rear end of that. Whilst that was happening, Freddy Slater was able to complete his move on Reza Suwutham, so he is up into 11th spot. Next up for him is another one of the XL Motorsports cars. That one, of course, oh, actually, correction, he did not get through on Reza Suwutham. So Freddy Slater, I believe, might actually still be in 12th position. I think Reza Suwutham was able to hang on to 11th spot. as Pat Huizenrode is able to hang on to the top 10. He's got 2.5 seconds up ahead of him though, as Huizenrode. So maybe they'll need Freddy Slater up to the head of that group and focusing on trying to close his way up into the top grouping, scoring some decent points. Once again, it's an epic drive coming in from Freddy Slater, and we're not even halfway through this one. 4 laps complete. It's Kanato Lee leading. It's Ninovic in second, the championship leader. It's Alazari, then Yamakoshi, then Johnson, then Prado, McIntyre, Gowda, Darianani, Huizenrode. Freddy Slater has completed his move now on Reza Sawuthan, and he has moved up into 11th position. Next target for him is Pat Huizenrode. Reza Sawuthan in 12th position with Deegan Fairclough in 13th. Then it's Schwarzer, Shui, Lyall, Pulling, Flusha, Bostangiev, Sherwood, Bustamante, Nanton and Flynn Jacks. All 23 of the drivers remaining out on the racetrack and keeping this high pace around the circuit, the Spa-Francorchamps. An incredible fastest lap of the race coming in from Kanato Lee exactly when he needed it, and the gap has grown to 1.2 seconds. He is out of DRS from the Rodin driver. Meanwhile, Nikita Johnson is making the move on Yamakoshi. It's Johnson there on the left-hand side of your screen in the silver car. It's Yamakoshi on the right in the red and black. And that is the move complete for Nikita Johnson for 4th position. So Johnson is focused forward. There is a podium up for grabs for Nikita Johnson. He is ready for it. He just has to get past Kianu Alazari. And again, there is most certainly that potential in speed. We know how fast Nikita Johnson is. Does have a podium earlier on in the season. That was in Silverstone race 2. Outside of that, he's only got one top 5. Retired from the race earlier on in the day, courtesy of contact between himself and the number 78 of Jack Sherwood, of which I believe that was the incident that gave him a 3-place grid penalty in this one. He's put that to one side as he rises his way through the field. That's Hugo Schwarzer, who's having a few more struggles on speed compared to the previous race. He finds himself in 14th position with Wampu Shui behind him, does Hugo Schwarzer. So maybe not looking quite as strong as he has done in the previous 2 races. A first and a second in the previous couple for Schwarzer. Not quite finding the speed in race number 2 at Spa. Really impressive there, your race leader flying through for the Hill Speed team. We've seen Hill Speed victorious twice this season in the hands of Freddy Slater back in the opening round at Silverstone. We could well be seeing Kanato Lee come to form and taking victory here in race number 2. We'll be completing the 5th lap of proceedings as everything remains fairly calm in this top grouping. I think mostly courtesy of Kanato Lee's pace at the moment, which is starting to separate the group somewhat. Across the line, it's 1.2 seconds, and no shock to anyone on planet Earth. Fastest lap has just gone the way of that driver right there. The red and black coming through the foreground of shot, the number 27. It's Freddy Slater setting the fastest lap of the race as he tries to close his way down on Kai Darianani. How much better can this get for the number 27? Is there a top 5 feels unlikely for the Hill Speed driver, but considering Hill Speed are running extremely fast around here, we're seeing that with Kanato Lee and here Yamakoshi. Freddy Slater is throwing himself into the mix once more. It's all 3 Hill Speeds in the top 10 as Kianu Alazari has now been passed by his teammate. These 2 are teammates on your screen. The silver car there on the left-hand side, that is Nikita Johnson in the number 4. Behind him is now Kianu Alazari, so he's dropped down to 4th position. The pair of those race for High-Tech TGR, but of course Alazari is backed by the Alpine Academy, and so has the BWT livery. Things have closed down, interestingly, for the race lead. Despite Kanato Lee looking incredibly fast, whilst he's been able to build a bit of a gap, it has now started to come back down a little bit. And now Alex Ninovic is closing his way back in for the race lead. 1 second, it could be sub 1 second by the time we get round to the start-finish line. And do remember, the DRS detection point is on the run down into the bus stop chicane. So if he's within a second at that point, he'll pick up the DRS activation, which he can use coming out of the final corner onto the start-finish straight. And then the second run is, of course, the detection point is before Eau Rouge and Raidillon, and then the opening of the rear wing happens after the Kemmel curve. Into Blanchimont, the drivers will go once more. It is Kanato Lee just pulling out a bit of a gap in the second sector there, trying to make sure that Alex Ninovic is not back within DRS range. We'll have 6 laps complete and 5 left to go. We are past the halfway point of the second race, which means we're past the halfway point of our Spa weekend, just like that. as they head their way through the final quarter. Kanato Lee across the line. Let's see what the gap is between himself and Alex Ninovic. The gap remains at just over a second then. Ninovic behind. Nikita Johnson looking to maybe move his way forward. Confirmed at 1.28 of a second. So Alex Ninovic will head up Eau Rouge and Radion and then up the Kemmel Straight with no DRS assistance. Nikita Johnson directly behind him will have it and might be able to go on the attack. Can Nikita Johnson find his way past Alex Ninovic, who's got 2 victories in the championship in 2025? The rest of his results, aside from one race, have been inside the top 5. And then the other result that he's not got inside the top 5 was a retirement, unfortunately, back in Silverstone, race number 3. Struggles a little bit with race 3s, but you kind of expect that a little bit, that reverse grid drama. Sometimes it can be a bit of luck, sometimes it can be a lot of skill, which we've seen from the likes of Deegan Fairclough back in Silverstone. We saw from Hugo Schwarzer even back at Zandvoort. No major position switches that time by. Kanato Lee was able to use the slipstream but not the DRS to close in a touch onto the rear end of Kanato Lee. But that gap might well be growing once more as they head their way into the second sector. The last lap time coming in from our race leader was a 2-minute 15.9. From second position, it was a 2-minute 15.9. They are setting identical lap times, first and second in this race, as Kanato Lee continues to lead. Is a personal best middle sector from Alex Ninovic. The problem is that's 0.3 slower than Kanato Lee. It was a personal best lap on the previous one for Ninovic, but things seem to be slipping through his fingers as we look back to the number 11 of Noah Lyall, who finds himself down in 16th position. It's a big shame for Lyall, who is right up there in the championship, currently sits 3rd in the championship, has finished in the top 10 in all races bar 1 this season. That was the retirement at Silverstone late on after contact. I believe it was going out of Brooklands into Luffield in that dramatic reverse grid race. That's the only time he's failed to finish. It's the only time he's failed to finish inside the top 10. That is probably about to change because Noah Lyall in 16th spot. I can't see that one changing around. 4 laps left to go at the second race here at Spa. And a great lap time coming in from Alex Ninovic. It was his personal best lap, but unfortunately it was a 10th slower than your race leader. Kanato Lee set to a 2-minute 15.664, playing the 2-minute 15.753. Nikita Johnson, the fastest of the top group, a 2-minute 15.398, 0.2 faster than the driver ahead, and that's why he's in position to make this move here. There we go, the silver car then pulling out to the left-hand side of your screen. It'll be the right-hand side as the drivers head their way up using DRS and firing his way through. That's Nikita Johnson in the high-tech TGR car up and into second spot. Now maybe, just maybe, that slingshot using the DRS, using the slipstream of Alex Ninovic could give Nikita Johnson maybe just enough to close up and get within slipstream of your race leader. A quick look at the replay of one of the easiest moves that you'll see around Spa. Basically, press the button, hold the foot down, and get the overtake done. And that is what Nikita Johnson did brilliantly. So, the first sector there for Nikita Johnson was obviously about 0.7 faster than your race leader. I'll update you with the second sector once they work their way through campus, where the second sector split is. Right now, they're heading into campus. This is campus, the right-hander, which then takes us into Stavalo and then out down the backstretch. And you just saw that gap open up rapidly. Half a second faster for Kanato Lee. It was a 59.3 in the middle sector, a 59.8 for Nikita Johnson. That could be the race done. Alex Ninovic was in the minute. It was a 1:04, so he was a 1.2 seconds slower than your race leader. As here comes the move in the background, that is Kanato Lee Kanato Lee, that was Yamakoshi rather, passing Alizari. So the red and black of Yamakoshi getting past Alizari and up now into 5th position, which begs the question, where's their teammate? And you can see in the background, Freddy Slater is onto the rear end of Dion Gouda as they head their way into the first corner. That there is the 88 that is the 66 of Yamakoshi. I did complain about that back in Silverstone. It does look like an 88. But that is Yamakoshi past Alizari. Freddy Slater has also got past Dion Gowder at the first corner. So Slater's up to 8th position and isn't ridiculously far behind this. He's got 3 laps to try and close in, and his pace has been very good. He's just set a 2-minute 15.2. That is faster than any other driver on the circuit at this very moment in time. Freddy Slater is coming back, as is Keanu Alazari. So Alazari straight back through then into 4th position, getting past Yamakoshi, as Dion Gowder was able to work his way past Freddy Slater once more, using the DRS and the slipstream. And it's Dion Gowder in the 25 XL car, up now into 8th position. Freddy Slater's having to get a little bit frustrated here. Here's another look at the move. So we'll see Keanu Alazari work his way through. A bit of a squeeze as they get under the braking zone. Yamakoshi could do nothing about it. And the bright pink BWT car heads its way inside the top 4. They've got enough of a gap now back to Will McIntyre, so they kind of have carte blanche to do battle around Spa. And it won't matter too much about how much time is lost. They're doing what they need to do. As we can see there, Freddy Slater in the 27, still stuck behind Dion Gowder. The problem was that he did the move down into T1. That allowed Dion Gowder to pick up the slipstream, pick up the DRS, and work his way straight back through. So he's got to be careful, he's got to be knowledgeable. I remember Kimi Räikkönen doing that in 2013 at the South Korean Grand Prix, where he was struggling to make his way past Nico Hülkenberg, if I remember correctly that day. The one time he did it, then Hülkenberg opened up DRS once again and was able to fly his way past. Exactly the same, copy and paste here to that day 12 years ago, where Dion Gowder and Freddy Slater are battling in a very similar way, and it's the same frustration for Freddy Slater. He's already made the move then up, and I'm getting word the race has actually come to an end a lap early. Kanato Lee has crossed the line to take victory. Nikita Johnson in 2nd position with Ninovic, Alazari and Yamakoshi. That is a checker flag, that is real. It's down to noise regulations and stuff around the circuit. So Kanato Lee gets an early gift then, 2 laps before the expected end of the race. It is Kanato Lee across the line for the first time to take victory in the GB3 Championship, partnered by the BRDC. I'm a little flustered by that. That caught me completely off guard. Nikita Johnson though, 2nd position. Alex Ninovic onto the podium once again. It's the first time that Ninovic has been on the podium where it's not been a race victory. So, I mean, to be fair, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. Showing that consistency, showing the piecing together a weekend. You can't win every single race. You can try, but you can't win them all. But alas, you're just picking up those podiums. That's the important bit. So, bit of an anticlimax there. All the drivers worked their way to the end of pit lane before I'm pretty sure they were supposed to stop at the top of the hill, at least the top 3, although they've probably been escorted down here by race control because we needed them for the interview. So poor Richard Randall, who was supposed to be interviewing the top 3, sprinting around the paddock area to try and find our top 3, I'm sure, as they work their way into the parkway, mate. Let's take a look at the race start at least, as we'll head our way down into the first corner and kind of understand how this race unfolded at this point. Of course, it was a great start from Alex Ninovic to take over that race lead. Keanu Alazari was giving it a good go down the inside as well, but Ninovic was the one who actually took over that race lead. You had Deegan Fairclough making a bit of contact there, trying to get it down the inside as well at that first corner. But again, superb performance, great race. Did enjoy it quite a lot. So we, as you can understand, this catching us a little bit off guard. We'll figure out how we're going to play this at the end of this broadcast as we go. What we do know is Kanato Lee has had an epic drive to race victory. It was by 1.2 seconds across the line. For Alex Ninovic in 3rd position, though, importantly for him, it'll be an extension to his championship lead. So Ninovic is looking really strong at the moment in 2025. And of course, this race does signal the end of the first third. I can get my words out. The first third of the 2025 season. Of course, 8 rounds down, 16 still left to go. Yeah, I know that's small things, but it's one of those ones where, as a driver, if you're leading at these points, 1/4 down, I said this before in race 1/4 down, 1/3. If you're leading at those benchmarks, it's just that positive mental attitude, just to kind of keep you in the hunt. For Alex Dinovic, pulling away a little bit in the championship, one thing that he cannot do is get complacent, because that's something which always costs you in this style of racing, where we've seen so many times before in years prior here in the GB3 Championship, partnered by the BRDC, where drivers have started out strong. I remember back to the first championship that I did, it was Luke Browning who ended up winning the championship. I wouldn't say he necessarily got complacent, but there were certain things where I was looking at it. He was definitely the fastest driver on the grid that season through most of the season. But Lyall Gramforth for the Fortec team, basically through sheer consistency and obviously very, very good driving, was able to drag himself back into contention. And part of me did always wonder at the time as to whether there was maybe a slight amount of complacency brewing there for Browning. Didn't cost him the championship in the end, but it is always something to keep a note on, of course. Either way, let's remind ourselves as to what happened in round 8. Highlights from round 8 of the GB3 Championship, partnered by the BRDC. It was Kanato Lee starting from pole position, but it was a poor start for the Hill Speed driver, allowing Alex Dinovic to take over the race lead into the first corner. Some big moves in the background saw Deegan Fairclough trying to work his way up, and of course everyone going all over the place on the braking zone coming into Les Combes. Yamakoshi was able to take over second position. Will McIntyre was firing his way through the Les Combes chicane before giving up those positions and dropping backwards down the order. Hugo Schwarzer and Patrick Huitenroder were going side by side up Eau Rouge and Radion, just ahead of the Argenti with Prema duo there of Wampu Shui as well behind. This was the move, though, for second position a bit later on in the race. Nikita Johnson trying to get past Yamakoshi, who was slowly moving his way back into contention for the race. This was finally the move, rather, for second place, as he was able to get past Ninovic and into second spot, as Kanato Lee was already starting to check out into the distance. It was a brilliant drive from the Hill Speed driver. Just checking out from these two, they were able to keep some good speed and close their way down. Meanwhile, Kanato Lee was working his way into the final corner to take that victory of the race. Superb drive from Kanato Lee across the line, and was a race that would finish slightly early. Of course, he was able to beat Nikita Johnson and Alex Dinovic to the line.